Good morning. Parenting is such a controversial subject. First and foremost, there is no rule book. Everyone has their own methods, everyone has their own decisions to make. And throw in the fact that whatever style you choose or design you choose to make for your parenting, there will always be judges deciding whether your parenting style is good or it is bad, whether it is in vogue or outdated. But I come from a background where I had a mother who thought that boys should cook, and if the food got burnt, I was given lashes of the cane and asked to repeat the cooking for a whole week. And if I wasn't creative enough, that meant 2 extra weeks of cooking. And when you cooked, it was firewood, even though there was a gas cooker in the house. Now the neighbors called that abuse. My mother thought that she's preparing a husband for her would-be daughters-in-law. Now that's how controversial parenting can be. You can judge my mother, but she will tell you that the end justifies the means. And now she has a good son-in-law of her daughter-in-law. That's parenting and more. Now we have a parent here who has short hair that hasn't been, in some comical terms, hasn't been fried at all. Beatrice Langariti is the CEO of Fellowship of Christian Unions, and she has a master's in marriage and family. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you have to go this far in order to become a parent or a good parent?
Well, yes and no. First of all, my master in parenting, I mean in family and marriage, was also a reaction to what I went through.
Okay.
That was also informed because before I went for the masters, I was working with Scripture Union, and Scripture Union works with youngsters. You have children in primary and also high school, and I used to visit. I was a student worker, so whenever I would visit, I found out that a lot of my work was involved in counseling, and there were issues around family. These children were either molested, or there were issues of parents not being there, or the father, or something like that. And so there was a burden in my heart to see how well I could be able to contribute. And so that's how.
How were you raised? Were you raised very, in today's terms, traditionally, with a little bit of what many human rights activists would call abuse? Did you come out of that method of parenting, or did you come out of the modern sort of parenting where your parents are your friends? I can't well describe my parents as those who tried very much to make children their friends. Which type of parenting did your parents take you through?
It's very hard to actually say which kind, but I can describe that.
Yes.
My mother, from what I know, first of all, when I was being raised up, I was being raised by a single parent.
Okay.
That was just my father, and later on he married another wife who stayed there shortly, and then, so that kind of became the norm. My mother got married to my dad when she was very young. I was told she was about 15.
About 15?
Yes, at the time.
Okay.
And so I don't know what happened, but then along the way they broke up.
Okay.
But I also know that religiously my mother is a Muslim and my father is a Catholic. So I don't know whether that also interfered. I also don't know whether the age interfered, but that's really been my story. So for a while I never knew who my mother was.
Yes.
But only my father, who was really the person who was the parent.
So in a way, do you ever see that history play out as in produce fears that shape the way you do parenting these days?
Yes.
In which way?
First of all, for me, because my father, in as much as he was the parent, he was hardly at home.
Okay.
And I was also raised with other step brothers and sisters, and so there were many of us. And so I found.
How many were you in that house?
We were about 10.
10?
Yes, at the number kept.
How many
increasing.
bedrooms?
Just one.
Just one bedroom,
Yes.
and there was 10 of you?
Yes, and you should also ask how many mattresses.
How many bedrooms?
The mattresses were probably 3.
3?
Yes, we had a decker and there was one big single bed.
Yes.
Yes.
And so did you see your father struggling to raise you up at all? Or was he like, you'll be fine because he had other things to deal with?
I think that he didn't quite say he was struggling, but I knew that he struggled financially, but I also know that he was hardly there. But I also know, in getting to understand him more, in listening to him, I know that his father died when he was a very young, then maybe about a teenager then, and so he assumed also the responsibility of fathering the others.
Yes.
So maybe part of what he was doing is just being sort of carried forward from what he could. You can only give what you have.
You have, yes.
Yes.
So Beatrice, are we saying that the way we are raised in many ways affects the way we raise?
I agree. And in what I studied, one of the things I had to contend with was one of the modules where you had, for a whole semester, you had to think about how your family background shaped you as a person. And that's something I had never gotten to terms with until at a master's level. And I realized that there was so much hurt I was carrying forward. There was so much baggage I had brought as a result of my past. And I had to ask myself what I was going to do. And one of the things they required for us to do was that we had to be, those of us who felt either abused or who felt we had garbage, had to undergo counseling for almost 2 years.
Okay.
And so that was for me very helpful.
Okay. So you get through this very complicated or complex method of parenting. Your
Yes.
dad is an absentee dad.
Yes.
And then you have a change of mother there.
Yes.
And then there's fighting.
Mothers, actually.
Yeah, mothers. And then there's a change of space.
Yes.
Has that then, did your father, I mean, the package he was, shape the kind of partner you went out to get?
Right.
As a reaction? Or
Yes.
as an action, say, I don't want to be parenting with a man like my dad.
Yes.
In that sense.
That's true. And I remember when my husband now proposed to me, I was a little bit tough on him because I wanted to know what in his manifesto, whether he had anything about parenting, about children. So I remember I had very tough questions for me. One of the questions was, what's your plan for raising children and I mean having children? How many do you want to have? And so we started that discussion, and we did that for 2 years before I actually said I do.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we talked about that. But also, yes, you're right that it influenced my choice of partner, because the kind of partner I was looking for was one who was going to be involved, one who was going to be supportive, and I was just not about to go through the pain I'd experienced.
So in a sense, you were running away from your dad,
Yes.
as far as a husband is concerned. Now, what sort of radical, if I could call it that one, you must understand that I'm using this because of the limitation of my understanding of English. What radical parenting decisions have you taken? In the sense, those that the people around you find a little bit extremist. Yes. What are some of those you have taken?
I actually stayed home for the last, I've been a stay-home mom for 9 years.
For 9 years?
Yes, so right immediately.
With your master's degree?
Yes, right after I finished the master's degrees, I just came back home and stayed home.
Why?
And well, it's a reaction because I had learned. I think the interaction in the training made me really think, and I had to ask myself whether I wanted to sort of what kind of parent I wanted to be, and I wanted to change a few things. I know, of course, in parenting world, even as myself, I experience what I've learned is that there's no parent who is perfect, but we can. There's room for improvement. We can work at it. Yeah. And so I wanted to be that parent who, was working at it. And
Beatrice, are you saying that stay-home moms make better moms than working moms, from your own experience? Because, I mean, you cannot decide to do something that, in your opinion, would disadvantage you as a parent. So by choosing to stay at home, you're trying to become a better mom, right?
Well, yes, because...
So that means that if you went to work, in your opinion, you wouldn't be as good as a mom, as you would have been staying home.
I think that what caused me to stay home, what I was trying to say, the statement there was that the children are my primary responsibility.
Yeah.
And their early years, they are very formative, and I wanted to be present and be a part of that. But also, the best gift you can ever give your children is a gift of time.
Okay.
That one cannot have to be. But also from my experience, I discovered that it's not just about staying home. You have to have a goal, you have to have a plan.
Yes.
Otherwise, you find, already also from my experience, we did interact with parents before I became a parent myself. There was a parent we did interact with who was staying home, but the whole day she was just watching TV, pornographic stuff. And so we noticed her child was beginning to behave in a funny way. And that's what caused us to begin to ask ourselves what's going on in the home. And then, we found out that the whole day she's just eating popcorns and watching movies the whole time.
Okay.
And not being there for that. Yes, she was at home, but not there with really, the relationship wasn't there with the child.
Okay.
So you have to be intentional.
Yeah. Now, without necessarily inviting all sorts of statements from women activists and all sorts of human rights activists, because I think you still do counseling, right?
Yes, I do.
When young parents come to you struggling with the decision of, two young 29-year-old with their 27-year-old wife, they're struggling through that decision of should she work, should she stay at home. When they come to you, where do you cast your vote?
I normally would.
As you advise.
The thing, it takes two. You want to be able to stay home. For example, in my case, it's something that I started talking about way before we got married. I told my husband, this is what I'm looking for. So he knew what kind of wife I was going to be and mother. And so by the time we started having children, there was no debate about that. And so I had his full support. Because one of the challenges you face in staying home is also the financial aspects as well. So you have to come to terms with just one income. And sometimes for some people it may not be enough, and you have to think of how you can use that to ensure that you're still happy and staying at home and looking after your children, and both of you as well.
You're saying the money won't be enough, but on average, we have more money than our parents did. And it was enough. You were in a house, you were in one room, and there was 10 of you. And there's this couple that has a 2-bedroom house, and they have 2 kids, and they're saying it is not enough.
Right.
I can't understand that.
You're very right.
Yeah.
We felt the same way, but when we made the decision to stay home, there are things we had to come to terms with. The money, we had to sit down, draw a budget, and then we discovered that my husband's income was not going to be enough to take care of us. So, but then we discovered, we said, but what about, we started looking within ourselves. Cutting my hair was one of those decisions I had to, because I was spending so much money and so much time on my hair. And then secondly, we had a huge car. And since I was staying home and I'm homeschooling, by the way, it didn't make sense for my husband to be driving a huge van with just him all the way. We used to live in Kanyanya and spend so much. And so that we had to make radical. And then the other thing is we were living in a huge house, 3-bedroomed, huge compound. That was also, very expensive. So we cut down and came down to a 2-bedroom house.
So, Beatrice, you're saying you decided to cut your hair.
Yes.
And with the cutting of hair, you cut family expenses.
Exactly.
In order to support your decision to stay at home.
Yes.
There are women out there who are gnashing their teeth and saying, this is nonsense.
Yes, yes.
What do you tell them? That these are the prices to pay for raising kids? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, it depends what your vision is.
Okay.
I just wanted to make the whole, because I told you, you have to have a plan, you have to have a vision. And so for my vision to work, which was to stay home, to be there for my children, to ensure that they are growing and they have my full support, I had to make this decision.
Yeah, we'll take a break here. What I know is that I have stayed home for about over a year trying to do parenting myself. Well, it was circumstantial, but I'll tell you, for a man to do it, that's something. Let's get into this break, have another parent, and this discussion will move from controversial to extra controversial when we come back.